Welcome. Thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Wednesday, April 14, 2021. For today's editorial, senators need to be reminded who it is they serve. It has become a habit, if not a tradition, to address our senators as honorable, but we might well reconsider whether that honorific is at all deserved in view of the antics of the Senate this week. The Senate is currently conducting hearings as a committee of the whole on the recent decision by President Duterte upon recommendation of the Department of Agriculture to temporarily reduce the tariff on imported pork and raise the minimum access volume or MAV, the amount that can be imported under the reduced tariff scheme, to 400,000 metric tons. The President issued Executive Order 128 modifying the tariff rates on April 7. An order formalizing the increase in the import quota is still pending. Under the modified tariff scheme, the import duties on pork within the MAV are reduced to 5% for the first 3 months following effectivity of EO 128 and 10% for the 4th through 12th months. Imported pork above the MAV quantity will be taxed at 15% for the first 3 months and 20% thereafter. The combination of lower tariffs and increased import quota is a result of very simple and eminently logical calculus on the part of the DA. The domestic pork industry has been devastated over the past 2 years due to an epidemic of the African swine flu or ASF, in part because of its own irresponsible practices such as circumventing quarantine protocols and practicing swill feeding, which can quickly spread the infection. Aggressive efforts by the DA have greatly reduced the ASF problem, but the damage has been done. Local hog raisers have lost some 3 million animals as a result. Until the population is rebuilt, the domestic pork sector will be unable to fully supply the country's demand, producing only about 1.2 million metric tons annually against the 1.6 million metric tons that is needed. As a result of the shortage, prices for this basic source of protein for Filipinos have skyrocketed. Allowing more pork to be imported at lower tariff rates will solve the supply problem and lower prices for consumers, which is and always should be the first priority in food policy. Increasing the MAV to approximately the amount the domestic industry is unable to supply compensates for the lower tax revenue for the government by increasing volume on the one hand, and on the other compensates domestic pork suppliers and distributors who might be adversely affected by increased imports by giving them the opportunity to engage in importation themselves. The Senate, however, has evidently decided its duty is to serve the special interests of the incapable domestic pork industry rather than the Filipino people, and has resorted to ridiculous tactics to try to tar the policy changes as irresponsible and corrupt. The DA has been accused of operating a kickback scheme that is responsible for inflated pork prices. Agriculture Secretary William Dar has strenuously denied this, and given the man's incorruptible character, he should be taken at his word unless hard evidence to the contrary is actually produced. Certain senators have presented outdated and out-of-context data in an effort to prove the increase in the MAV is excessive. The Senate even made an attempt to drag the Bureau of Customs or BOC into its contrived controversy, eliciting testimony that the BOC, quote, was not consulted about the tariff adjustment. This is entirely irrelevant, as the BOC's role is simply to collect customs duties and tariffs as directed and not to determine the country's trade policy. The domestic pork industry is, of course, entitled to its livelihood and should not be subjected to unfair competition, and the DA has a responsibility to assist it in remaining viable and productive. We are quite certain, however, that the DA has taken that important priority into consideration in its policy recommendations and has presented a solution that offers the best possible compromise between consumer and producer welfare. If anyone is being irresponsible, it is the Senate willing to hold Filipino consumers who are already under economic stress hostage to the narrow interest of a small group of pork producers. This farcical hearing of the Committee of the Whole must end. And that's the editorial for April 14, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print. Subscribe to its digital edition or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or listen to the Voice of the Times.